Hi everyone. So very nice to see you all here today. We're going to talk about development cash flow modeling. Okay. And this is, I'm not sure if this is the first time you come here or if been coming here for a while. But what I'm going to start doing here is with a presentation, and then I'll give you some practical tips on how to build your cash flows. Okay. So let me just start here with my presentation. There you go. Okay, so the idea of this webinar today is to talk about real estate development and how to build your first pro forma as in cash flow pro forma, or also as a profit on cost development appraisal in Excel. We There's a lot of people doing like use a lot of like software for doing that, and nowadays you can even use ChatGPT or Claude to do that. But the main idea of Excel is that you can control your parameters, and you can check the outputs if it follows your business plan, because sometimes it's not the case when you run it like in a software, or even on generative AI. Okay, so this is my main point here today. The agenda, it's a 30-minute webinar. So what is the tendency? Oh, I think I've got the so it's mainly to the agenda. Sorry, I think that I got uh the wrong slides here. Um, but the idea of today's webinar is to mainly talk about development performance. Okay, apologies um for my slide here not picking up the right content, but what we're gonna do here is talk about developments and how we build like a very simple cash flow in Excel. Okay. So this is the main setup. So we one thing that we need to be aware of is the timeline. So a lot of time the timeline is not explicit, like if you're just doing this profit on cost appraisals. Okay, so when we're building cash flows, you need to be aware that the timeline is very important. Okay, and it's also important because you can also check, like if normally delays is one area that will have a big impact on your returns, especially because if you delay, there's this opportunity cost, of course, with the money, but the idea is that you're going to increase your finance costs. So you need to be careful with that, because this can really eat up your profits. Okay, so that's the timeline. So the way I build here, I have some phases. So the phases of development, the planning phase or the lead up phase, and we have here the construction cost, the construction period. We have a vacancy period as well, and we have a stabilization, like when you're going to be operating this asset, right? And then we're gonna assume an exit here. In this model here is pretty much residential BTR valuations, right? So what we're assuming here is that we have resi, but this resi here is they are it's like you're gonna sell it as a block, so to say, because the idea here is that you're gonna receive the rents, and then you're gonna assume an exit yield of 4.25%, for example, and you're gonna get the GDV, the gross development value. Okay, so the gross development value is your rents. So in residential, we normally use monthly rents, and then we multiply by 12 and times the number of units. So that's what the formula here is doing. The number of units, the rent that you're going to receive in total times 12, because there are 12 months in the year, divided by your yield for 25%. Okay, and that gives you a GDV of 40 million. One thing that people always forget is because that's how the UK valuation works, is that the yields here are on a net basis, okay? And then what happens is that you need to then take out the 6.8% from because of the net yields here. So therefore, so to say, your valuation, your exit value here is 37 million because you have to take out the 6.8%. And the way you do this is that you divide by 1 plus the 6.8%. Is not the times 1 minus the 6.8%. This mistake I see a lot of people doing. So as attending this webinar, I hope you don't make this mistake. Okay. Um, and then what happens is also that we need to look at any sales cost and any like concession. So it might be that you're gonna assume that you're gonna have a rent-free period, or you're gonna have capex contributions, or you might have some sort of concessions here, like discounts to your exit value that you would like to take into consideration. For residential, normally you sell it like it's already fully let. That's the main assumption. But if you have commercial, for example, and then you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna sign a 10-year lease, and then I'm gonna give a 3-year rent-free period, and therefore I'm gonna sell it after 1 year in operation. So you have 2 years of rent-free that you would like to give as a discount to the buyer of some sort. So you have this flexibility. You need to have this flexibility to make this assumption. Okay. The site value here. So this is assuming there is a site value. If not, then you can calculate your residual land value. Okay, either using GoldSeek or Solver, or you can keep trying manually and for a long time as well. And then here as well, we're gonna have like the inputs here, which are the hard costs. So that's construction costs. So mainly in the UK, that's how we tend to split the costs between hard costs and soft costs. Okay, so if you use, for example, I don't know, so maybe somebody there is practicing from Germany, and then in that case, they use different ways to split the costs. But in our case, it's soft costs and hard costs. Always assume a contingency as well, right? So that's the unknowns, right? And what I say is that it is unknown, because sometimes people say, oh, do you add the cost inflation there? Well, if you think that there is going to be cost inflation, then you need to add that to your costs, your construction costs, right? Because it's a unknown known, but it's that's going to be like some inflation there on their cost, but it's the contingency is for the unknown. um so that's you can add some kind of infrastructure costs as well on your hard costs. So the hard costs are mainly like the direct costs, and then you have the soft costs as well, which mainly professional fees. Well, the valuation standard tends to be 12% altogether, but again, like that's a valuation standard. You need to be a little bit more careful if you're doing this for your own development appraisals, right? Because if it's a big scheme, for example, you're not going to spend the whole 12%, but you can spend like less than that because it's already like a big scheme. Planning obligations as well. So we have different types of planning obligations. So the master plan here, we call it planning obligations or mitigation, some people, but some other we might know it as the master planning, like how your building is going to fit within this master plan for the city, for the area, and so on. And then you get here the soft costs and then the total costs excluding finance. One thing you need to be aware of development is I put even like Argos development. So because they assume this finance cost, and then the finance cost that comes like on this like standard valuation. Standard, sorry, need to edit the here when it goes to um online. Is that it assumes 100% the Argus or the standard valuation assumes 100% loan to cost on everything, and then it's an approximate number, so to say, right? And then some people even use the interest as the yields. So if you're doing this analysis, be care like if you're either doing the valuation or you're instructing valuers to do it, you need to look at this interest cost with a little bit of pinch of salt because this might not be the actual cost of finance. Okay. Um, right. So to the cash flow modeling, right? How to build this. One thing you need to be aware of is how you're going to distribute costs. Okay, because there are two main ways to distribute costs. One is what we call straight line, and the other one is the S curve. Okay, so in the course we go through this, when to decide which one to use. But for example, on the soft cost distribution, what I have assumed here is that you have a straight line. What does a straight line mean? It means that you're gonna have the same amount of distribution, cost distribution, over the period. So here we're distributing the soft cost 33% across 3 periods. Yeah, so then they add up to 100%. And then the way to do this is just say, okay, if you are here, our soft cost assumption is pretty much like this professional fees and planning obligations, and they always come before you actually start the construction, right? So therefore they come here in the beginning of the cash flow of your development. And then what we have here is the hard cost distribution, is this idea of S curve. What is the S curve? The S curve is one, let me just fix here. View, that's a tip here. You can either split or freeze panes. I'm gonna freeze here. And then what happens here with this S curve is that the S curve is a cumulative curve. So as you see here, this is a cumulative. So that's your development timeline, right? So then it's going up here is your S curve. So you see like it does like an S is a cumulative cost. Okay, so it's your hard cost S curve distribution. So we calculate here this development cost, and then the way we do this is we assume a normal distribution. Okay, so if you look at the costs here for your draws, this should be here a normal distribution. Okay, so that's what we call the normal distribution. It's just that this is where your construction costs are, so it goes slowly. Let me just make here. I think yeah, this is fine. And then it just goes up and then goes down again. It's just that like the rest of the periods here are for the is like when you have exited the development already. So that's one thing that you need to be aware of when you're building your first development pro forma, right? That you have different ways to distribute costs. So soft costs, I tend to be distributing it as a straight line. So the costs are all the same across the periods. Okay, so if you had, for example, five periods as your planning periods, then it will be 20%. So 20% is a straight line. And then for the S curve here, if you have 5 periods, then you don't know what it is. So then you have to, what we do here is that we assume a normal distribution. So we use here a function called the norms dist to find out what is this normal distribution, the bell-shaped curve. Um, right. So then what else do we need? We also need to know what is not only like what the costs are, but then like once you know here what is your distribution of costs on the percentage, then what we need to do here is build the actual cash flow. Okay, so here when we build this cash flow, this is, a basic um, development. So what you need to know is like, okay, what is your site acquisition cost? And then your hard cost when you're gonna come in. Okay, so this is your hard cost here, following the S curve. And then we have the soft cost here, which is a third, yeah, of your total soft cost. Then the other thing here that we need to do is to look at the sales proceeds. So how do you do the sales proceeds? From a Excel point of view, what we need to do is say, okay, is my date, so we use a simple if function, if F110, which is the date, equals exit date. Okay, so here as well, like I'm using the name here, exit date. Okay, does Excel, like, how does Excel, read your mind that you want the exit date? It's not that it reads your mind, it's because you have named the cell exit date on top of here, right? So this is also naming cell. This is the technique. So you're gonna name your cell here. If the date equals exit date, then you're gonna get your sales pro. How does Excel know that it's a sales proceeds? Because again, you have named the cell here of your sales proceeds, sales pro. Okay, so that's the naming cell technique as well. And then to name the cell is you just go to, you can change here the name of your cell. So here on the top left you have the naming box. So if you're typing anything Maria Cambridge Finance, then this is going to be named Maria Cambridge Finance there. Yeah, and every time you refer to this cell, it's gonna give you the right name for the cell. And then you're going to have here the development cash flow, which is the sum of your development cash flow, the costs, and your sales proceeds. Okay, so that's the very simple basics of development, right? So here you have all your costs. So this is what we call the practical completion. So you have no more costs again. And then here you're going to have a zero because you're assuming like a vacancy period, for example, right? So it might be that you don't want to, um, you will sell like there's no vacancy, so you're gonna sell straight away. Then if you want to sell it straight away, then you're just gonna say, okay, I'm here. I'm not gonna have any vacancy, and I'm not gonna wait for any. Um, I'm gonna pre-let everything. The minute everything is pre-let, I'm just gonna go, and then I'm gonna sell this straight away. Yeah, so here you can say, okay, I finished my building, I achieve my completion, all the tenants move in, and off I go, and I get all this money. So this is assuming 100% equity. Okay. So once you build this cash flow, then you can find what is the return on your cash flow. So let me just see. You can put lots of like sensitivity tables as well. Okay, so here you have like the geared notional and the geared with the cash flow, like the difference between the notional and the geared from the cash flow is that the notional will assume the notional finance, right? 100% loan to cost, and then um it's more like an approximation. Yeah, but it's a valuation technique. And then you have the geared cash flow here, which is then based on the debt finance here, and I won't have time to go through the debt finance here, but it assumes that you have like this, what we call the capital stack. Yeah, so the capital stack is one that you're gonna have a mix, like where the money is gonna come from. So it's gonna come from the developer's equity, the investor's equity, senior debt, and mezzanine debt. Yeah, and then you have the interest rates here and the originations fees. So um from there, then you can calculate what is the profit. So let's look here at the geared returns, okay? So this is going to be the geared profit. So where do you find the geared profit? once you build your cash flow, then you have to build the development finance. So you're going to have a mix of senior debt and mezzanine debt. Okay. And then it's going to be the development cash flow plus the senior debt plus the mezzanine debt. And that's your equity cash flow. Okay. So your gear cash flow is this one here, the 44, which is pretty much the development cash flow. Okay, so when you buy the land, you build, you get planning permission, and then you sell at the end, then this is your development cash flow. And then you need to do this financial engineering, and then this financial engineering has to be okay, where is the money coming from? So it's going to be normally is a blend of debt and equity, and therefore you have here your development cash flow and the senior and the mezzanine. And then you run this across. So in terms of equity, right, what you need is this 4.3 million here. And then you have nothing, 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 because everything is then funded by your debt. So in terms of equity, you have already spent your, how much did we say we have for? Your 3%. So in total, there is like 20% equity. So therefore, we have here this gear cash flow, which is the 4 million is in fact the equity that you need. And then at the end here, you're going to get 15 million. How are you going to get the 15 million? Because you are going to sell the site for 35 million, and then you have 12 million to pay back the debt. So you borrow 10 million, and then you need to pay 1.5 million in interest. Yeah, your finance costs. And then you're going to have mezzanine debt. You're going to borrow 6.5 million, and then you have to pay back interest of 765 and 129 for 1,000 for the mezzanine. And then it means that at the end you get your equity of 15 million. So it's not a bad investment, isn't it? You put in 4.3 million, and then you're going to get back at the end 15 million. So that's your gear cash flow. So how do you find the profit? In order to find the profit, all you need to do, here we referring to the L44, but L44 probably means the sum of your cash flow. Okay, so if you sum up this cash flow, you know that this is gonna be your profits. So that means that you are taking out 4 million from the 15 million. Yeah. So what does it mean? It means that the 15 million will pay your equity, you return your equity, the 4.3 million, and whatever you have left over is your profit. So 15 million is the total amount that you're gonna get, and then your profit is 11 million because the extra 4 million is the equity repayment, so to say. Okay. And then you get profit on cost. Always it's an interesting one because I see a lot of people using profit on cost in order to calculate the residual end value. Okay. But my opinion is that this is not correct. The correct way to do it is if you run here an IR calculation. Okay, an IR calculation. And then you can run here the residual end value based on an IRR, which is a measure that it's a lot more aligned with your cost of capital. So if your cost of capital is 8%, for example, and then you're gonna say, okay, I need 10% or I need 5% as risk premium for me to take this development risk. Therefore, you have a better idea. Whereas if you just say a profit on cost of like 20%, you don't know like year on year what's gonna be like, because this is just not it doesn't, if it's a very long cash flow, for example, a development of 5 years, 20% profit on cost, it will not be enough, right? If you have to compare this with your own cost of debt. So this is my view on profit on cost, like to run residual, but you could use the profit on cost, and then all you need to do here is goal seek. So if you want to find out what is the development, what is the residual end value, what you do here is that you run a goal seek. Okay, so it's going to be a goal seek, and then what if analysis goal seek, and then you're going to say, okay, I want this profit on cost to be my target profit on cost. So say 20% by changing the land value. So what is the land value here? 8.5 million, H44. So you see that your residual land value is 12.9 million now, which means that your profit on cost is going to be 20%. So if you pay, where are your land costs? If you pay 12.9 million, that means that your profit on cost on this development is going to be 20%. Okay. And then your equity, then we have to go back here to the base case. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then with your base case here, you can calculate then the equity, how much equity you need. As we mentioned, we need 4.3 million because the rest is financed by debt. And then we have an equity multiple of 3.6 million, 3.66 times. So that means that for each pound that you put in, you're going to get 3.66 back. Yeah, so your money is multiplying by 3.7 times. And then we have here the residual land value on the profit on cost, which is we just did with using GoSeek. And then here we have a calculation of IRR, right? So it's very important that we all know how to calculate IRR. So here I'm using a function called XIRR for that. So XIRR, what is your gear cash flow, which is the equity cash flow, and the date. So when we use the XIRR, X and PV, remember that you need to use the dates of your cash flow. So you need cash flows with the dates as well. And then we can calculate here the net present value. Okay, so the net present value is the discounted cash flow, the discounted cash flows for each of those periods. So then it's going to be, discounting the 15 million. So in fact, here the NPV here is discounting the 15 million. What is the 15 million? Is your equity here, right? Discounting it all the way to present value, all the way here, and then minusing it with your equity outlay. So that's the meaning of your net present value. So it's like your day one, like is your profit as of today. So if you were to, perhaps want to sell this project, so then what would that be? Like the NPV is the added value of this project on your land. So that's also another way to look at NPV. So say you have the land here and its value, the book value is 8.5 million, and then this generates a 5 million, day one profits. So that means that the 8.5 million plus the 5 million is your so to say the value of the land with this value add of development, right? And in other words, this NPV plus the land value is what we call the residual on IRR. And if you are listening here, always my suggestion, my recommendation is that you use the IRR in order to calculate your residual land value. And the same process, you go seek. And then what we do here is that we're going to say, okay, I'm going to go seek here to value of 0, then PV of 0 by changing the land value here. Yeah, 8.5%. Therefore, I'm just calculating here. There you go. And then you found that you have 14.6 million here as your residual land value. And then you have to copy and paste there. So that's a little bit like of the, I guess, the inefficiency of GoSeek is that, you need to calculate based on your initial calculations, your inputs, and then you have to go back and then change it back again. Okay, so this is the plan for today, like how this development performa works, okay, and then showing you some tips of how to calculate the residual and values, right? About both using the profit on cost and the IRR. And always my recommendation, always is that you use the IRR or the NPV equals zero in order to get your residual and value. So that's if you have any questions, happy to answer them. But if not, this is the plan for today. Just as you go, there are some follow-ups here. Okay. Let me just show you. Please attend my course if you're interested in modeling, development appraisals, how to calculate residual and value, how to calculate an IRR, how to do an S curve. Please join us. We will have a course starting this week. Okay, so it might be a little bit short notice for you guys, but we have throughout the year. And then next week, maybe you can do is more like on the financial modeling. We're gonna have lots of financial modeling on development, on the value add strategies, on debt structures, on income producing assets as well. So all next week is gonna be a big week for me. And if you would like to join and you are listening to here, we can get a discount of 10% if you use the CF webinar 10, which is the promo code when you're booking. Okay. What else? So you can attend my the course, and you can also buy my book. So I have a book. This is on Amazon on real estate financial modeling in Excel. Okay, so you can go there now. I normally what I do is I go to Amazon and I type in my name and then it comes up this book because it's the only book I've written. And I think it might be the only book I'll ever write in my life because it was a lot of work. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them here. Or if you'd like to contact us by email, you probably received our email because that's why you're here. So please send us an email, and I hope I'll see you. Uh, I think next week I'm not doing the webinar because I am teaching the course, but I hope you keep coming and enjoying and come to the course, buy the book and come to the webinars, and hopefully this will improve your investment analysis skills, because at the end of the day that's what we want to do, right? Like to underwrite these deals. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.